I used to think jogging at night was the best way to stay mentally relaxed after stressful working hours. Little did I know that that seemingly harmless habit had silently brought me closer to someone I never wanted to remember. A person who never walks on the road, but always chooses the bush. And he always knows how to keep quiet. That evening, I arrived at Willow Creek Park later than usual. Nearly 10 p.m., the park was almost empty. The wind blew gently across the lake. The pale yellow light reflects in long streaks on the water. I really like this scene. Peaceful, airy, no one pays attention to anyone. I warmed up and started running. The first turn passed smoothly. I feel more relaxed in my body and less stressed in my mind. But when I entered the western part of the trail, a place rarely visited year-round, the atmosphere suddenly changed. On both sides of the road are chest-high bushes and rows of large trees planted long ago. The night moon filtered through the foliage, creating a patchy light under my feet. Usually this place has the sound of crickets, the sound of moving leaves, and sometimes there is the sound of a small deer running by. But that day, nothing, not a sound. It was as if all life in the forest had been strangled by someone. I slowed down and took off one earphone to hear better. And then I realized something that stopped me in my tracks. Someone was running parallel to me, but in the bushes. Not the back, not remotely. It was right, so close that it was less than 2 meters away from me, hidden by a thick layer of leaves. Not footsteps, not a rustling sound. It's a very clear feeling of movement. The bushes moved with my every step. If I run faster, that movement increases. If I slow down, it also slows down. If I stop, it stands still. Completely accurate, not missing a beat. My heart sank, throat tight. I tried to stay calm and shine my phone light into the bushes. Didn't see anyone. I only saw the leaves move slightly, as if someone had just pulled their hand deeper. I stepped back. The feeling of peering eyes from under the darkness made the back of my neck hot. I continued running, this time slowly, and the movement in the bushes continued to accompany me. There's no sound, but I feel it. That thing moves very low, close to the ground. Don't walk with normal human footsteps. And extremely deliberately kept quiet. It felt like he was crawling after me, holding tight to his every movement to avoid making any sounds that might alert me. I felt my heart rate increase little by little. The trail continued endlessly. There were no lights, no one else, just me and something hiding deep in the bushes. When I saw a street light ahead, the first light after more than 200 meters of darkness, I decided to run quickly. As long as I enter that light, I think I will be safe. I speed up. Movement in the bushes also increases. The feeling of someone rushing after me from a very close distance made me almost lose control. I tried to keep my pace, not showing my panic. Finally, I rushed into the yellow light of the streetlight, and the movement next to it stopped immediately. Not slowly disappearing. Not slowly. It was a complete stop, as if the thing in the bushes reached the edge of light, then stood still, right there. I turned my head. In the darkness where the light could not reach, there was a man standing there. He stood straight, tall, and thin, his entire body black like a shadow cast in the wrong place. Couldn't see his face, only saw him standing near the edge of the bush. Immobility. Doesn't react when I look at him. Not a word. I took a few steps back, and at that time, he tilted his head. An unusually deep angle, like his neck had no joints, or like he was trying to find an angle to see me better without stepping into the light. I clenched the phone in my hand. He raised one hand, moving so slowly that it was scary. No threat. Soundless. Don't rush. Just put your index finger to your lips. Italy told me to be quiet. I didn't dare stay another second. I turned around and ran as fast as I could toward the park gate. As I ran, I felt like the darkness behind me was moving. It wasn't the sound of footsteps, it was more like a heavy aura behind me, as if he was watching my every step. Finally, I arrived at the security area. I was out of breath, trying to explain, but the story was so unbelievable that I couldn't finish the sentence. The two guards looked at each other. One person asked seriously, "You said he ran after you, but in the bushes?" I nodded. No noise? No sound emitted? I continued to nod. The two guards looked at each other for a long moment. Finally, one person said, "Your description is exactly the same as the people who reported last week." I stood dumbfounded. Recently, someone was followed while jogging, but the police couldn't find anyone. That person does not walk on the path, but always chooses the bush, and moves very low, very fast, extremely silent. I almost burst into tears from fear. The guard added that a woman went missing 2 months ago, also on the same trail. She called 911 before losing contact. The last words she said were, "He crawled after me in the dark. He was right next to me." The guard looked at me, his voice lowered. "Police found fingerprints on the ground. The movement pattern is not like that of a normal person standing upright." My body felt cold, as if I had just been immersed in ice water. I hurried home, locking the door as soon as I entered. I pulled all the curtains, checked the windows 3 times. I was afraid that if I exposed the light, he would stand somewhere and look in. Around 1:50 a.m., while I was drinking water in the kitchen, I accidentally looked out the large window next to the dining table. I dropped the glass of water on the floor, my hands shaking. A fingerprint stuck on the glass, print from outside. The mud is still wet. The 5 fingers were long, contorted, and pressed very deeply, as if the person had leaned his face close to the glass to look inside. I retreated into the darkness of the hallway. My whole body trembled uncontrollably. I closed the curtain, but it felt like he was still standing there, right behind the glass. I didn't sleep all night. I tried to reassure myself that I was safe in the house, but near 3 a.m., when everything was absolutely silent, my bedroom door shook slightly. There was no sound, but I clearly saw the door move very slightly. Someone is standing outside the door. I sat motionless, my eyes never leaving the door. Through the small gap at the foot of the door, I saw the silhouette of a person's feet, not moving, standing motionless right outside. I don't know how long he stood there. I only know that when morning comes, the shadow of that leg is no longer there. I moved house the next day, but 3 days later, while I was drying clothes at the back door of my new house, I saw something that made my entire body cold. On the ground, right under the kitchen window, there was a long palm-shaped streak of dirt, as if someone had just put their hand against the wall and crawled away. And on the window glass, a new fingerprint, exactly like the fingerprints from the old house. No need for noise, no need for threats, no need to appear clearly. With just one fingerprint, I knew he had found me, and he's still walking in the bushes. Just wait until night. I live in a quiet residential area, about 20 minutes drive from the city center. The evenings here are always very gentle. A few yellow street lights, sparse traffic, and the occasional person walking their dog. Because of that peace, I usually jog around 9 to 10 p.m. after finishing work and having a light dinner. I still think my neighborhood is one of the safest places, but perhaps the most dangerous things always appear right where we think nothing can happen. That night, I left home at 9:40. The weather was a bit chilly, just enough to run comfortably without sweating too much. I turned on my heart rate monitor, turned on some low music, and started running to the small slope leading to the back of the residential area. This slope connects the residential area with the vacant land planned to be built into a commercial center in the future. The entire lot was empty, with only a few lonely lampposts and rows of half-planted trees, casting a vast darkness as I passed. I had run across this lot dozens of times and had never encountered any problems. But that night, as soon as I reached the top of the slope, I stopped without knowing why. There were no unusual sounds, no animals, no strong winds, but my instincts were clear. There was someone up ahead. I looked down the slope toward the empty lot and my heart clenched as if it were being squeezed. A man stood right in the middle of the road. He stood right in the center of the slope, about 40 meters away from me. The streetlights behind him were backlit, leaving me with only a tall, slightly thin body and his face completely in shadow. He didn't leave, didn't turn away, didn't move at all. Not the type to wait for friends, or answer the phone, or walk a dog. He stood right where I was supposed to be. I slowed down, walking. Not because I wanted to get closer, but because my body was reacting on its own. I couldn't move any faster, like my legs weren't listening. As I got a few meters closer, the man changed his position. Not a step, not a start, but a slight tilt of his head to the side, in a very slow motion, like an old machine trying to turn its neck. His tilt was much deeper than a normal person's. It extended until his head was almost horizontal, while his body remained upright. The whole scene sent a chill down my spine. I stood about 30 meters away from him. He was still staring straight ahead, his head tilted at that unnatural angle. I swallowed, trying to calm myself, and took a step back. He raised his head straight back, also at a slow and steady pace, as if observing my reaction. I took another step back. He still looked. No advance, no retreat, no words. The land behind him was dark. No houses, no passers-by. If he rushed forward, I would have no one to call for help. I tried to keep my voice calm, saying loudly, Do you "Need any help?" There was no answer. Not a sound. He just stood there, his head slightly tilted to the opposite direction, as if assessing the distance, but his eyes, or more precisely, his dark, unclear face were still directed at me. I started to turn around and run in the direction I had just come from, but my instincts warned me once again, if I turned and ran, he would chase after me. I decided to step back, keeping my eyes on him. When I had retreated about 3 meters, he moved. Not a step, not a turn, but a shift to the left, then to the right, as if trying to change position to get a better view. The movement was slow, but purposeful, like a predator, assessing its prey from the optimal angle. I lost all composure. I gripped the phone, pressed the 911 button, and before I pressed the call button, he changed his position very quickly. His body straightened up, as if stimulated by my taking the phone. That reaction made me sure that he was watching my every move, not missing even the smallest gesture. I turned and ran as fast as I could. My body operated on the most primal fear. My heart rate spiked, my breathing quickened. I didn't dare look back. I just knew I had to run straight toward the residential area. As I ran near the 3rd traffic light, I turned my head briefly. The man was no longer in the middle of the slope. I couldn't see him anywhere. I took a deep breath, trying to reassure myself that he had left, or was standing somewhere I couldn't see. But when I turned my head again to look at the trees on the left, I saw his shadow on the wall of an abandoned house nearby. Not my shadow, not anyone else's shadow. It was the shadow of a tall, thin man, standing right next to the wall, but his real body wasn't visible in the light. The shadow moved slightly to the left, then stopped. I couldn't think straight anymore. I ran straight into the densely populated area, to the neighbors' houses, and asked them to open the door for me to stay. While waiting, I stood behind the glass door and looked towards the slope I had just passed. No one, no sign of him ever standing there. Seeing that, I thought I was panicking too much. But when the police arrived, they found a small object lying in the middle of the slope, exactly where he had been standing. An old lighter, the kind with a brass case engraved on it. A single letter engraved on it. M. Before I could say anything, the older policeman looked at me intently. "Your description was exactly like the 2 recent reports." I froze. 2 people who had seen him said he stood in the middle of the road, not moving, not saying anything. When they stepped back, he tilted his head to look at them as if he were testing the distance. One girl said he always avoided the light, standing at the edge of the darkness. All 3 victims said he didn't make a sound. I asked, "What about the other 2 victims?" The policeman was silent for a few seconds and then replied, "One moved away. The other hasn't been found yet." I felt my hands start to shake. That night, when I got home, I didn't dare run again. I locked the door, closed all the curtains, and turned on the lights in the house. But as I was about to go to bed, I walked past the living room window and almost collapsed. Outside, where the light didn't reach, there was a figure standing straight. Not walking, not approaching, not making a sound. Just standing there. Straight. Body dark. Face in perfect shadow, as if the light was deliberately avoiding his head. I stood still, my hands shaking violently. He didn't move. I gently turned off the living room light, hoping that the darkness would make him unable to see me. But as the room darkened, the figure seemed to move closer, not by obvious movement, but by feeling. I couldn't sleep that night. The next morning, when I opened the door to go outside, there was another lighter in front of my house. It was exactly like the one the police picked up last night. But on the back of this lighter was engraved a sentence. "I found you." I packed up and moved out the same day. But would he stop looking for me? I wasn't sure, because the first night in the new house, when I pulled the curtains to look out onto the street, at the end of the alley where the lights didn't reach, a familiar figure was standing there, motionless, head tilted slightly. I pulled the curtains back immediately. And a few minutes later, there was a piece of paper tucked under my door. On it were written only 2 words. "See you again." I moved to this area because I wanted to get away from the hustle and bustle of the city. My house is near an old railroad track that has been inactive for nearly a decade, a line that used to connect 2 small towns. Now it's just a long path, used by many people for jogging or dog walking. During the day, it's open and peaceful. But at night, the scene becomes a completely different world, silent, dark, and filled with the feeling that someone is always standing just outside the edge of your field of vision. But I didn't notice it until the night it happened. I got off work late that day. had a quick dinner, and decided to go for a run to clear my head. It was almost 9:30, but there was still a faint glow of dusk lingering on the horizon. I brought a small flashlight with me, because the road near the railroad tracks had no direct streetlights. I left the house, walked across the lawn, and stepped onto the small gravel area near the tracks. The air was cool, the wind was gentle, everything was extremely quiet, maybe a little quieter than usual, but I didn't think much of it. After running for about 10 minutes, I came to the old train tunnel. The tunnel was about 40 meters long, so dark that standing outside, I could only see a completely black hole. I had gone in during the day to check it out, and the inside was full of trash, rusted iron, and scribbled letters eroded by the sun and rain. It had been a long time since I had gone near it at night, but that day, for some reason, my steps slowed down as I approached the tunnel. It felt like an invisible string was pulling me toward the darkness. I stood about 10 meters from the tunnel entrance, shining my flashlight inside. The light touched the cold stone wall, then went out as I went deeper into the pitch blackness. That was when I realized something was standing inside. Not a clear shape, not a human figure, just a speck of light, like a light shining on some metal object in the darkness. It didn't move. It didn't come into the light. It just stood there, as if waiting for me to get closer. I felt a chill run down my spine. It was a visceral feeling, like when you stand in front of a wild animal's mouth and know something is looking back from inside. I took a small step back. The speck of light disappeared, as if covered by something else. Then it reappeared a few seconds later, a little lower, as if the thing had shifted position. I turned the flashlight harder, but the light couldn't penetrate. The darkness inside the tunnel seemed to swallow all light. I began to feel like I was standing too close to where I shouldn't be. I turned and kept running, heading toward the housed area. But after about 20 meters, I clearly felt someone coming out of the tunnel. I didn't hear it. It was a feeling in my body, the feeling of survival that everyone has. I turned my head to look back. No one. But the reflection had disappeared. I ran faster, trying to get away from the tunnel as soon as possible. When I reached the part where the train tracks branched off, I felt like I was being watched again. There was no sound, no unusual shadows, no obvious movement, but I felt that gaze, a gaze so close, as if piercing through the darkness. I turned my head, no one. But then, when the flashlight beam was directed to the ground, I stopped. On the fine sand covering the train tracks, there was a row of new shoe prints. Straight, separate. The shoe prints were deeply imprinted, heading from the tunnel entrance exactly in the direction I was running. What chilled me the most was, there were no turning back tracks. No new tracks overlapping the old ones. As if the person had come out of the tunnel and never entered by the usual way. My heart began to race. I tried to reassure myself that someone had passed by, but the abandoned track was now sparsely traveled, and the footprints were too fresh for the thick dust. I turned on my flashlight again. The footprints ran parallel to my running path. They didn't veer off the edge. They didn't change direction. They didn't stop anywhere. As if someone had followed the exact route I had taken every night. I felt a chill run down my spine. I ran faster, trying to get away from the track as quickly as possible. But as I neared the old station along abandoned building, only the cracked cement frame remaining, I couldn't help but glance toward the broken window. And I saw someone standing there. A tall figure, standing right in the doorway, his dark figure blending into the darkness behind him. I couldn't see his face, but I knew he was looking at me. He didn't move. He didn't flinch when the flashlight beam passed by. He didn't move. He just stood there, tilting his head at an odd angle, as if trying to figure out why I was running so fast. I paused for half a second. Big mistake. He slowly brought his hand up to the doorway, lightly gripping the edge of the wall. Not hard, not loud, just a slow, steady, deliberate movement. I felt like someone was squeezing my neck. I turned and ran away. When I reached the small overpass where the tracks went underground, I knew I had to go through a completely dark section. This was the part I hated the most. But going around would take another 5 minutes of running in the dark. I decided to run faster to get across. But when I got to the bridge, I stopped. A figure stood in the middle of the path. The same posture as the man in the middle of the slope in story 2, though I won't tell you about it here. Tall, straight, head slightly bowed, arms hanging down, not moving. The dim light from afar made his body a solid black mass, without any details. The light couldn't reach his face, or he kept it in the dark on purpose. I backed away instinctively. He was still standing still, but the direction of his face was clearly looking at me. He tilted his head to the right slowly, very slowly, as if analyzing something. It felt like meeting an animal that knew every move of its prey. I backed away, not taking my eyes off him. Each step back made me feel like I was slipping into a situation with no way out. When I was far enough back, he stepped to the left, just a step, as if to block my path if I changed direction. I turned and ran around the lawn outside, where there were more streetlights. I ran until my legs were sore and stretched. When I reached the residential area, I stopped to catch my breath. I looked back at the railroad tracks. No sign of him. No sign of a person. No movement. I gasped, trying to reassure myself that he had left. But as I took a few more steps toward the house, I looked down at the concrete pavement in front of the residential gate and almost dropped my phone. A new shoe print had just been made there. The same shoe print I had seen near the tunnel. But what was even more horrifying was next to the shoe print. A small piece of paper, folded in half, placed neatly, as if someone had gently dropped it. I bent down to pick it up, my hands shaking almost uncontrollably. There was only one sentence on the paper. "I'm right behind you." My heart sank. I looked up and down the dark street again. No one. But I knew he was somewhere in the darkness. That night, I couldn't sleep. I sat in the living room. All the lights were on. But every time I looked out the window, I felt like my eyes were fighting against the darkness that might be hiding someone. At nearly 2 a.m., when everything was dead silent, I happened to glance out the window again. At the end of the alley, where the streetlights didn't reach, there was a person standing there, in the same position, straight, silent. His face was in the dark. I almost dropped the glass of water I was holding. The figure didn't come towards me. He didn't leave either. He just stood there, staring straight at my house. I slowly pulled the curtains shut. My hands were shaking so much I couldn't even hold the edge of the cloth. I backed away, my heart pounding so hard I couldn't breathe. I remembered the note. "I'm right behind you." And then I realized something terrible. I ran from the tunnel to the old station. From the old station to the overpass. From the overpass to the residential area. From the residential area to my house. If he had been behind me all that way, then he would have known exactly where I lived.